All right, let's head over to the Zoom line where we've got Canada's greatest export on the line with us, Mr. Terry Etam. He's a writer for the BOE Report, should say a columnist for the BOE Report.
Sure.
He's a writer and an author for himself. Books available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. End of the Fossil Fuel Insanity. Also used to keep up a blog, which I'm sure he's not doing much of this day, but Public
Right.
Energy #1 was the name of it. And I bring it up because it's a cool name. How you doing, Terry?
Pretty good, thanks, Jason. How about you?
Hey, not too bad. Your book, End of the Fossil Fuel Insanity. There's a tagline or a colon or a comma or something that some words keep going afterwards. Do you ever get some mix-ups? Do people buy it thinking that you're some Sierra Club Greenpeace author, and then they're like, "Whoa, this guy he works in the industry here. What's
Yeah.
I thought this was the end of the fossil fuel insanity."
No, I haven't heard that in a while, but you're right. That happened when it came out. I think it came out 2019 or something, which is kind of the peak of the Greta insanity. And people were, and I sort of chose it that way on purpose because there's a bunch of options for a book title, and I didn't want it to get lumped in one bucket or other. I didn't want to say oil is the greatest thing on earth and you can't get rid of it. And I didn't want to say we're getting rid of oil eventually, and because everybody knows that's true. So I slapped that on it, and just so that people would think a little bit and go, oh yeah, what is this about? And then because it was aimed at the people in the middle, there's the hardcore greenies, the environmental activist types, the ENGOs. They're never going to budge. They just there's nothing you can say or do that'll change their mind about hydrocarbons. They're killing us all. That's all you need to know. And then there's the oil and gas crowd, which I speak to more so than anybody, and they have their obviously they have their own interest in oil and gas and their own beliefs in what's going to happen. The book is aimed at the people in the middle, the ones that are like buffeted by these opinions and go, I don't know what to believe, what's true. So I that ambiguity I didn't mind, but I have heard from some pro oil and gas people that's like, yeah, that's a piece of crap, that thing, because it's like it's like, well, you should read it because it's not anti-hydrocarbons. It's the end of fossil fuel insanity is the end of the concept of fossil fuels is being tossed around by the media, not the product itself. So, but
I'm glad you brought up an industry example because I was going to do that. And sometimes if you bring up an industry example, industry doesn't like that. And by the industry scoffing at your title, they basically judged a book by its cover. Literally
literally,
judged a book by its cover. Like wow, that
absolutely did.
actually, well, didn't realize you could actually have that happen in this moment in life. But yeah,
There's a cardinal
and
no-no.
that's and we've been talking about this for a long time on the crude life, at least, that one of the oil and gas industries, because they are modern day kings, without a doubt. I mean, you can't even farm without the oil and gas industry.
You do
So
nothing. Yeah.
yeah, you do nothing. And so like literal banking basically and insurance might be above them or at least equal to them, but that's it. I mean, there's really not much else out there in terms of industry that would be considered a king of a certain, type
Yeah,
of
yeah.
a deal. And and so if you say anything that somebody rubs them the wrong way or they interpret it the wrong way or whatever the case is, if it's not this blind faith tribalism, retaliation can happen from the industry. And by the way, and it's from the extreme green side,
Oh yeah.
left side, whatever you want to call. So I'm talking about the two different tribal sides here, not the ones in the middle. And my question is twofold, Terry. One
Mhm.
is that you have experienced a little bit of the tribalism within the industry, whether it be the extreme or the oil and gas industry or the climate industry, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. Um, do you feel that that has been an issue for the oil and gas industry because trying to reach that 80%, that soft middle that you were trying to reach, that the crude life tries to reach, that a lot of people have tried to reach? Sometimes I do wonder, does it even matter? Because can the 80% even stand up to the 10% and the 10%, if that makes sense, Terry?
Yeah, well, that's a complex question. I think the 80% in general tends not to care about stuff like utility type stuff. No, nobody cares
As
about
long
it.
as their lights turn on and their cars start, right? As
Yep,
long as their lights turn on and their cars start, who cares?
that's right. Nobody thinks about where it comes from or pipes or anything. So that's just background noise to them. And the only way it comes in is if somebody scares them about something, like the climate crowd does, or if they run short of it and their cost of it goes up. So I think that's where they tend to care. And I think that the two spectrums handled things quite differently. I think the environmental activist crowd, they had a purpose in mind for the fight against climate change, and better or worse, but I'm not even judging them on that. But they decided that humanity is in danger because of rising temperatures, which are caused by burning of hydrocarbons, and that must be stopped at all costs. And so they had a moral imperative to do that, and so they went at it every which way they could. And on the other side, you had, I don't mean to use the word arrogance, it sounds too flip, but there's entrenchment, I suppose. Entrenched empowerment maybe is a better phrase for of the oil and gas sector. It's like, we've been around forever, we're not going anywhere, you guys can do whatever you want, and we'll be standing when you're done blowing out your candle because you went too hard. And they're right, but there's a lot of damage that was done in the meantime, and a lot of missed opportunities to help educate that 80%. And an example I used to use is that when I worked for a pipeline company in the pipeline wars, like when Keystone XL got killed, and pipelines were deemed dangerous, and you can't have a pipeline anywhere near you or it's going to blow up or leak and damage all your water. And the people who are saying this literally had pipelines going underneath their feet, and they didn't even realize it, that they were there. And the industry could have done so much to defend their position just by bringing out some information, just saying, you say our pipes corrode all the time. That's not true, because we have smart pigs we can run through, and they'll tell us where there's the tiniest hint of corrosion, and we dig up those chunks of pipe because that's not acceptable to us. It won't operate under pressure. We don't want to have the risk of a blowout of oil or natural gas or whatever. So we do a lot of work to show that this is a safe medium to move product. They said virtually nothing. They're just like, people will figure this out. So that's a bit of the entrenchment that you're talking about, and it's pretty quiet. And I think I'm not speaking for the industry necessarily, but the reflection that I kind of got from a lot of executive types was like, yeah, they're a bunch of fools, and we'll win in the end, and they're right. But in the meantime, it's been a really ugly game. So it's
While you were talking, I was kind of thinking about just the evolution of what's happened because when I was growing up, the oil and gas industry was not controversial by any means.
no.
Occasionally, you had some Thanksgiving Day gas price discussions, but you did not have the level of discourse that we see today on a regular basis. And the industry has made more money than they've ever made in the history of the industry. And when I look at where we're at today and the extreme tribalism that has happened, you described it very succinctly how, and maybe the right didn't start out like this, but I believe they did, because if the left started out like this, most people do start out with good intentions. So on the left, they wanted to go and they wanted to clean up and save the whales and do all these different things. And and by the way, I really despise saying right and left now that I'm saying
I
that.
know,
I
this
mean
doesn't even fit anymore. Yeah,
it does not fit. No, it does not. So you had the extreme environmentalists going out there doing these types of things. And then you had the oil and gas companies who I believe wanted to build communities. I believe wanted to make a profit, wanted to do ethical capitalism and wanted to have honest day work, if you will. And I don't
mm-hmm.
think there's a damn thing wrong with that, Terry. I don't think there's anything wrong
There's
with
not.
somebody going to work, feeling good at the end of the day that they've made a difference in the world as a part of a small, you know, bigger picture, if you will. And I think what ended up happening, and people can blame, oh, the Rockefellers, and people can blame what's the American Foundation and the Heritage
I
Foundation, and they can blame the Sierra Group and whatever. At the end of the day, a lot of this money was greased by governments through different write-offs and through different regulations and whatever it might be. So what ended up happening, it's almost like each of them had a third person that they could bat things off and become the enemy. Now it's just a team. Now it's a game. It has nothing to do with the cause anymore. It has to do with winning. So when I'm listening to your story, Terry, about how somebody will judge your book by the cover and immediately scoff it, or they'll downplay the Greta Thunberg warriors out there, that's not a real thing anymore. That's arrogance. That's tribalism. That's that entitlement entrenchment that you're talking about. The Ides before March, if you will, the Ides before the fall. And that's what I see going on more than anything, is that this quick dismissal is the biggest Achilles heel that's happening in the oil and gas industry, because they're at a point right now in history where they literally could take over again with this carbon industry and with the AI and some of the other thing, and do some wonderful things out there, Terry.
Oh,
Do some
absolutely. Yep.
absolutely wonderful things. But I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to get used and abused and pumped and dumped for the nuclear industry and a few of these other geothermals and other people that want to use it in order to get to that next step. So then they can turn their back on them and say, thanks for nothing. And some people might say poetic justice and, oh, good, they're going to get what they have coming and all that other stuff. And I'm not into that crap, but I
No,
just said a lot. I just said a lot. So I
that's
want your
okay.
response on some of the things I just said.
Well, it's I should be clear too that if I sound like I'm being overly critical of the industry, I don't think that's the case. I think they've mishandled messaging, and I think there's
And
absolutely
by the
nothing
way,
wrong with.
Terry, technically we're in the industry, so we care.
Well,
I
I'm
mean, the reason
literally
we're talking
in the
about this is
industry.
because we
Yeah,
care. Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's
anyway,
true, and
sorry,
it's
go ahead.
I just think they could. There's you can rage against another camp, or you could. I don't know. To this day, I don't understand why there isn't a commercial of Expand Energy or somebody with an executive or a drilling engineer or whoever standing in front of a building when it's minus 25 out, pointing to a building, a hospital or something that's heated by natural gas in winter and saying, this is what we do. This is every day we keep this hospital from freezing, and or this apartment building or this office tower. This office tower I'm in right now is a 40-story glass cube, which would be uninhabitable right now because it's 90 degrees outside. We would barbecue in here, or no, we would broil, I guess. And in winter, it's uninhabitable because of the cold without natural gas for heating or cooling. It's like, what? That's not a hard thing to point out. And people can visualize that too, especially when they see the cloud of steam coming out of the exhaust of a heating unit. So there's some valid messaging that can be made that points out the value. I mean, people say, yeah, you wouldn't have any runners without, or sneakers without petrochemical products, which is true, but that's not as
But
directly
Terry,
linked as
Terry, we've talked about this over and over again, and the messaging doesn't work. Like,
as I mean, they
I
have to find
mean,
a different way to do it. It's just like
yeah, and that's what I'm saying, to where it's almost like, and I listen, ever since the millennials got ushered in, there's this generation that's nothing great until I show up type thing, and so maybe they do. I mean, we used to do this thing in Fargo called Homeless and Hungry. My
uh,
son's godfather would put it on, and it was in October, so the weather was a little bit drizzly. It wasn't cold, but it wasn't nice either. I mean, it was, it could be freezing temps right around that 35 degrees.
yeah.
Anyway, you'd sleep in cardboard boxes is what the kids would do. Is the high school kids? It was basically like a social cause lock-in
Mhm.
where you out on the front lawn of the church, all the kids would go and they'd sleep out for the weekend, and they would have concerts, and they would try to turn it into a something a little bit more enjoyable. But at the end of the day, that's it. That's what you had, and if you didn't make it, well, you learned what it was
Yeah,
like to be a real life homeless person.
yeah, yeah.
I outside of doing that to these kids, and people who are protesting against this, because listen, I came from the print industry, so I understand what a paradigm shift is. I understand when you have a monopoly, and then at the end of the paradigm shift, you're lucky if you can have 10% of the market share. And that's what happened in the print industry. You went to 99% of the cities in the United States, and there was one newspaper. That's called a monopoly, folks. And they had the thought monopoly for 100 years. And then the
Mhm.
internet came, and it disrupted that industry to the tune to where the newspaper, I mean, daily newspapers are weekly. So just to give you an idea how identity crisis they are. And Terry, when you're talking about, natural gas, I can't think of anything that has saved humanity more than natural gas. Like, I listen, crude oil,
Yeah.
you've done great. Awesome. I get it. But natural gas, my goodness, Terry, just the cooking and the heating of just a regular basis. The fact that natural gas is lighter than air, or is it lighter? How's that? Which one's
Yeah,
lighter than
lighter,
air?
yeah, rises.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's lighter than air.
Yeah.
So the fact, I mean, it would just leak from the. In fact, most of it's leaking from the ocean. That's how they find it in the ocean. Anyway, so I'm going on my little tirade here. I got to step down a little bit, but my question goes back to we're at a point where feelings mean more than fact, and the industry makes more money than any other industry, and they're
Mhm.
still putting the same people in there that are delivering the same messages, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And that's what I'm talking about. I get it that somebody probably doesn't want to let so and so go teach somewhere because he really likes the position he's in right now. But hey, the proof is in the pudding. The body of work is done. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
you've got a country that's trying to ban you. I mean, that's not a good result, Terry. Sorry,
no,
go
no, it
ahead.
isn't. It's but there's such long wavelengths to some of these things, right? And I had a
Yeah.
chapter about this in my book, but like the U.S. government in particular was the U.S. was the economic engine of the world for quite some time. I would say since World War II, and then right up until the rise of China, maybe arguably. But that was it. That was the global epicenter of the economy, and it ran on affordable oil and gas, mostly oil, right? And so I think not everything, but a lot of U.S. foreign policy was driven to ensure access to the next supply of oil and gas. That's why the U.S. buddied up to Saudi Arabia, and that's why governments got overthrown and wherever that to if something was going off the rails, like the number one priority was secure access to oil. That's why Canada is such a good big goofy buddy up here with our big oil sands, right? That's what we're there, and that will be needed at some point. So forever that's been the driver, and so whoever's running these companies, that's what what they grew up in, right? And that those are the big training grounds, the Exxon's, Chevron's, Amoco at the time, BP. Those are the people that generated the expertise that fueled the oil and gas industry. That's how everybody thought. There's no end to our industry because nobody can live without our product. And they're right. And then in the past 5 or 7 years, there's that first serious challenge to it. It's like everyone out there, a lot of people are saying like EVs are going to come in and they're going to displace all the demand for oil, and oil's an obsolete product, and you're all going to have stranded assets. And I think everybody for a year or two thought, well, maybe that's true, because Tesla was taking off and everything else. Now I think we've kind of seen that isn't true. There's a lot of EVs around, and they've barely made a dent in global oil demand, which keeps going up every year, regardless. So that's
Oh, I don't.
there's
I think the EVs are here to stay. By the way,
oh, I think they are too.
and
But I think they'll
they're
find their
but
home, right?
people don't understand about the EVs is the EVs are not going to be for personal car use. They're going to be
They'll be
for ride shares. Yeah, it's going to be
they'll
for
be yeah,
like
they'll be
like
very
my
specific.
my son is 19.
Mhm.
I predict by the time he's 25, so in less than 6 years, car ownership will be down 30% because
Yeah,
this.
it could very well be. Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
think
I do think
it'll
it's going
catch
to
on
be.
quick.
Yeah, there are pockets where it's perfectly suited for it, and there are pockets where it isn't. And I think the market will sort that out. It's just, but the shotgun approach where everybody's changing within 8 years, that isn't going to happen. I guarantee you that, or 20. it's just not going to happen. I go to some work camp and see where everybody relies on diesel engines and tell me they're going to switch to electric vehicles. Like it's not, they don't work. And I can tell you in Canadian industry, an EV won't work. And in agriculture, an EV tractor will not work. That's just, there's not, they just don't function in those. Now, around an orchard, pulling around a little fruit cart works perfectly. I think all of
Mm-hmm.
those guys will switch their little 30 horsepower tractors to electric ones because you drive it around and you plug it into the wall at the end of the day or whatever. So I think there are these pockets where it'll work, and we're going to have a bunch of everything. But the evidence so far is that the global energy pie, it's not how you slice up a fixed pie. The pie is just getting bigger and bigger. We just add more. We had wind, we had solar, we had coal in China and Asia. We're adding nuclear, and we're burning more oil, and we're burning more natural gas. It's like we're not stopping anything. And 3/4 of the world that we're sometimes referred to as the golden billion. North America, Western Europe, Japan, Australia, we have everything, right? And there's 7 billion people that want to live like us. So what's their trajectory? They're I talked to guys in Africa, the head of the African Energy Congress, a great guy. I talked to him quite a bit, and he's like, I don't want a solar farm, I want a fridge. And that's everybody else in Africa too, right? A fridge runs 24/7, not when the sun is up, plus 3 hours with a battery. That doesn't do any good for food. Well, how would the average African's life change if they had a fridge instead of like right now they can't store their food, right? You can never have more than 2 days worth of food unless it's dried beans or something. How does their life change? Or India or Pakistan or so those are the global trajectories. We get lost in our own world here in North America, what we think the world is doing. I don't think that's reality. I think we see what we see when we look out the window or watch the news or listen to our politicians. But we're just wealthy beyond belief here. We take that for granted.
Yeah, the farmers went through this when the grocery store replaced the farmer in the same way the light switch has replaced the energy worker. And entitlement, boy, that can creep in a lot of different ways. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you got the solution to the world's problems, and you don't understand what the problem is, but boy, you got some solutions.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
And that happens
um,
all the way up the chain, right? Like my son points out to me, like if we drive past a big fancy house, and somebody will say, well, that's a rich guy, and he says like, well, we're rich guys compared to some other people in some other part of the city, right? He's right. It's like we are. So don't feel like it, but compared to a lot of people, the way we live is pretty well off, right? So it's
yeah, I'm debt free, so I consider myself rich.
there you go.
And
Yeah.
I drive a POS car. It's a piece of crap car, we'll call it. And I just had this conversation with like a young 12 or 13-year-old the other day where he asked me something about this rich person and that rich person, and he came up and I said, I'm more into freedom. I said, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to go ask those rich people if they can just take off and go to Texas tomorrow, just because they can.
Yeah.
And if they can't, they're probably not very rich. And if they can,
Right.
well, that's a different type of richness. And, because a person who owns its own time, there's a value to somebody
Yeah.
with that, Terry. And for
And
me as a family man, that's number one. So, yeah.
right. Yeah. And if you spend your time worrying about your possessions, that's not free either then, right? So what about
That's
my third
exactly
house?
right.
Yeah. So
Well,
it's
I wanted to ask you about AI
mhm.
because that's a lot like with these cars, the EV cars. It's going to get forced and pushed into society faster than society's going to even know what happened. Um, like but by the time the grandparents find out about the ride, I don't even know what the name of the ride share app is. There's a name for it where you can, do you
There's
know what it
Waymo
is?
and there's a
Yeah,
company called
Waymo.
Waymo. Yeah,
Waymo.
that's the
Yeah.
Google's company. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the Xerox of photocopies, right? They just kind of took over the market share, so everything's Waymo. So to me, like I said, I actually think that's going to take off, and if it doesn't, they'll manufacture kids into consent. They'll up insurance rates, they'll up gas rates. There's so many ways that you can sell a $50 a month Waymo subscription, and people will buy it all day long and get rid of their car. So that I could see happening in 5 years. I think it's a tragedy because was that a word? I think I just made up a new word.
Travesty is a word, indeed.
Travesty. To me, the American automobile, and I'm sure the Canadian automobile, but I'm not familiar with. Do you guys have automobiles, or do you just buy them from other countries? And I'm being serious. I don't even. I've never even heard of a
You mean, do we make
Canadian
them? Yeah,
car.
we do have
Yeah.
them. Oh, no, we don't have our own
What?
native Canadian vehicle. No, no, no.
No, you don't.
But yeah,
Okay, so it's not like there's not
well,
like oh, I don't know, a Manitoba Loon or something, or no?
there's the we build. There's a something called the Auto Pact between Canada and the U.S., which was signed in the '60s, I think, and it was like a little mini free trade zone. So a bunch
Oh,
of
sure.
so there's the parts go back and forth all the time. Like a Ford vehicle that's might be made in Cleveland, but it has a bunch of parts that come from Canada, and vice versa. There'll be a Dodge Ram that's built in Ontario, but it has a bunch of parts. And I think I read an article about a piston in the New York Wall Street Journal. It said an average piston in a vehicle can cross the border 7 times before it's actually sold. So it can be
Wow.
the material comes from Canada, goes to the US for this, and so it goes to Mexico, comes back to the US, goes to Canada for assembly. And it's just so it's just totally integrated, which isn't too popular anymore. But you
I've
bring
never
up,
had that thought in my life, by the way. I've never had that thought in my life if
yeah.
Canada had a car. I've
Oh,
never
so
even
people are bringing that up
crossed
now.
my
It's
mind.
like, well, yeah, we'll show everybody. We'll build our own. We'll develop our own cars. Like, yeah, go right ahead. Good luck. That sounds like another government
Exactly. I mean,
struggle.
what's the point if someone else is doing it? But to me, the car is the ultimate freedom. Like that, you can get on the
Well,
road and you can go. It's a modern day horse. A horse was a
yeah.
freedom that a person never had before. Just like a fighter jet or an airplane would become a new level of freedom that you
So
just
you
would not
mentioned
experience.
yeah, you mentioned something about AI and EVs, and
Yeah.
I for a long time I thought that EVs were going to be, like I said, find their niche, and I think the governments have forced they forced manufacturers to build all they can, and nobody's buying them now. That'll change over time, but but AI is just going to explode because people find new uses for it all the time. So, like people say, oh, it can replace writing a document for me, and it can do that, but so I'm a writer. So let's say I want to, I can work on a novel for 6 months. Now I can go to AI and I can say, write me a novel about this guy that has a podcast that lives in North Dakota and he has 12 wives and whatever else. And 2 minutes later, it chugs and chugs and chugs, and out comes a novel. And then I can change that completely. I can say, well, make him instead of a podcaster, make him an engineer, and it rewrites the novel. And I can say make him a philosopher and make him an expert in Far East medicine, and that quickly then it rewrites the novel. So an average Google query takes something like 0.25 kilowatts. An average AI query takes 10 times that amount. And you can tell when you search something on Google and you see it gets the little AI box. It takes a couple of seconds to populate it. If I get a novel done, it takes a couple of minutes. So how much power is that taking? And that's available to everybody now. And the next step will be turn that into a movie now. And how much power is that going to take? So I think the open-endedness of AI is people will just make it do crazy stuff. Like make me a movie about whatever. And so I think that's the energy part that comes back to the energy part. And then so I think I was wrong about EVs because I didn't see the potential for EVs either. And somebody else pointed this out. Another U.S. podcast named Stuart Turley goes like, just think what the Waymos and the autonomous vehicles, what that's going to do for senior mobility. And I was thinking about that, and so imagine me sitting here in my office, and what if I can work from anywhere in North America, and I can hop in my self-driving car and say, take me to the prettiest park in Colorado. I got my Starlink on the roof and it can drive me right there. And I pull over for a nap whenever I want. Everybody can do that. If you're 85, you can do that. If you're 20, you can do that if you can afford it. So I think you're going to see an explosion in travel from EVs because people can do whatever they want. They can multitask. Maybe you don't even need an apartment. Maybe you just drive around from national park to national park. Who wouldn't want to live in a national park? And you can do that with an automated vehicle, right? If it's all like Tesla's drive from the factory to the owner's home now, right? That's pretty crazy. So why wouldn't I go program in? I want to go to every national park in the U.S. over the next 2 years. Take me there. So
Have you
what does that
driven the
do for-
self-driving cars? Have you driven these
I have
self-driving
not
cars?
been in one. Yeah.
So I've driven some hybrids that have like they have monitoring, so like you can put it on cruise control,
Mm-hmm.
and it will never get within a certain amount of feet of the car in front of you. It'll actually slow down and it'll react. It'll swerve out of the way and it'll do dumber things if things happen. It's pretty good actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's that's the senior mobility part. As far as the kids just being part of their new world, that's why it's going to be top and bottom ended. It's going to be bookended, and so that's why I think within 5 years, as soon as they make the push, it'll happen faster than digital money. That's for sure.
It could. Yeah.
The AI part too. That's another very very concerning issue that no one is talking about. Nobody's talking about because parents will start saying, send your kids to Chat GTP University and save $50,000 a year. I mean,
Yeah.
the amount of, well, you figure it's anywhere from 70 to 80% of the people that work in the thought industry market. Okay, realtors, you and I, anybody who works in human resources, every single one of those jobs, attorneys, they're all subject to get taken out by AI. Every single one of them. So when you're talking about 70 to 80% of the workforce potentially losing their job, that to me is the bigger issue, because the whole reason we work, from my understanding, is to keep us busy so we don't kill each other. That's my understanding, Terry, is that's the whole reason we're doing what we're doing. So otherwise, we're just gonna start killing each other and thumping each other
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
clubbing each other and being Vikings, doing that whole thing. So that once that happens, you're gonna see some chaos, and the people that are creating AI and this world and this whole little separate economy, that to me is a real issue, a legitimate issue that I don't think anybody's talking about.
Yeah, I think some people are scared of it because you can see the logical conclusion for some occupations for sure. Now, whether that we've seen this before, right? Like when robots came out that could paint cars, it's like doom and gloom for the auto plants because they won't need any people. It's like that's not true. They still need a bunch of people. Now, totally different occupations, and AI could totally change that too. You're going to see a lot get wiped out that can't be replaced, I don't think. And will it be replaced by some new occupations? I don't know. What does Hollywood look like if everyone can make their own movie? Like, what do you need them for, right? So I agree with you, but I have no idea what it looks like when it changes. And as an energy guy, at the end of the day, the only thing I know for a fact are those two things that you mentioned, EVs and AI, are just going to take more energy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's and speaking as somebody in the industry, I know that won't get AI out of existence. It's going to take guys out there to go drill wells to find it and whatever else. I know they'll get better at finding it, but we have to get better at finding it anyways, because we're going through all the easy stuff. We're drilling, like you pointed out the other day, Expand Energy drilled a 5-mile lateral well. That's insane, which is incredible technologically, and what a feat. But it just means we're draining that reserve even faster, right? So it's at some point there's going to be a reckoning where the cheap stuff is going to be gone, and it's just going to get more and more expensive to do that. But I don't think that will slow AI. I don't think the cost of power will slow AI for a long time. So
That's the part that's going to be so interesting, is that you're going to see a decrease in people working and an increase in energy use, because if they're not working, they are going to be bored. They're going to be like, hey,
do something.
Make me a movie on this.
Yeah.
And right, exactly. I mean, I've already made 4 songs using AI, just trying it out. Just just seeing, okay, let's see how it sounds. Actually, it
Yeah.
was 6 songs. Now I'm thinking about six. And I think about, based on what you said earlier about how much wasted energy I did, all I can think of is my dad yelling at me, shut the door. We're not trying to heat the outside. That's essentially what we're talking about, Terry. We're talking
Oh
about
yeah.
wasting energy to the tune
Oh
to where you're leaving your front door open, trying to heat the outside in Moose Jaw. I mean, for crying out loud.
no, it's
So,
true. Yeah. And it's just a
yeah, I
mouse
mean, we're
click.
talking wasted energy. Yeah.
Oh, and I don't think we can even you could one of the songs you wrote, you can say make it sound like Eddie Van Halen or make it sound like Jimmy Buffett and total rewrite. Like that's a total
No, I only had 6 credits and then they were going to charge me. So that was it. But if I paid $20 a month,
Yep.
seriously, if I paid $20 a month, I could probably, I don't know, burn about 4 cities worth of power in a weekend.
You're
Just
not wrong.
testing out. Hey, make it sound like Jimmy Buffett. All right, make it sound like Gordon Lightfoot. Now make it sound like Tool. Now make it
Yep.
sound just why not? I mean, because I used to do that with other things, so why would
Oh
I do
yeah.
that with this?
And as fast as you can come up with it, and that causes some computer on the other side of wherever the country to go into overdrive, right? And this I don't know where this ends. Like we're talking about us doing it, right? What about when another billion people start doing? And actually, the adaptation rate of AI in places like Africa just dwarfs any other technological innovation. Like they're jumping straight from they have cell phones. They don't have a fridge, but they have AI because because that physical connection for the fridge, that infrastructure isn't there, but it is for cell phone. So it's
That is remarkable.
yeah,
That is absolutely
I was
remarkable.
shocked by the adaptation that they're going to, like skipping right ahead to that endpoint. But then they're going to need power too, right? So it's um, and maybe somebody will make it more efficient, but then the human condition seems to be if it becomes more efficient, we just use more of it, right? We don't we don't just absorb all of that efficiency and have a smaller and smaller footprint. We just do more of it, right? The price of copper gets cheaper, we build more stuff out of copper. If the price of oil or gasoline gets cheaper, we drive more. We price of cars goes down, we buy new cars. It's yeah, you mentioned most of humanity is to keep us from fighting each other. My view is that most of our occupations are due to inefficiency. Like the reason so many people are employed is because we don't have perfect information, or we're not good at assembling something, or we don't have a 3D printer that can make the print parts that we need immediately. Because we don't have that, we need a supply chain. Somebody has to build them somewhere and put them on a ship, and somebody operates the ship, and somebody offloads them, and then it goes on a truck and gets here to a parts warehouse, and then there's like 30 jobs in getting you whatever a mouse for your computer, right? But if a 3D printer can make that down the road for you with AI help, you don't need that, but you still have the same mouse, right? So I think that's we're moving towards that. We can have anything we want at any time. And then the question becomes, what do we do with, well, the people and the leisure of it all, right? Like, how do you get people to motivate themselves to look after their health if they can do everything just by clicking a mouse or speaking into something without even moving, right? Like a lot of people are forced to be active now through their work or whatever to some extent. Are we going to turn into like Wally's in that movie where we just float around on little things and get a food pellet every 6 hours? And I don't know that I don't know what the shape of humanity looks like, but and I don't even like speculating because it could go anywhere, right? I don't
Well,
know. It's
it's different because we're energy transition, they call it. Well, that means if it's a transition, we're ending one thing and going to another. It's not an energy mix then, it's a transition. It's kind of
yep,
like renewable. There's no such thing. You can't just invent energy. It's you can transfer energy. You just can't as far as what I know of physics, Terry, you
yep,
transfer energy. You don't just renew it. You don't. It's not like you're Merlin and you can
no,
magically make a sun appear.
yeah,
So maybe you can,
but
but when I
There,
look at where the industry is going now, you're up in Canada, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I understand Canada used to have a hockey team too. That was, you guys have hockey anymore? Because
it's kind of good.
down in the U.S., our teams down with Sun keep winning. I didn't even know Florida had a hockey team, but we keep winning.
I
So
know.
anyway, so
Next subject, please. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no problem. Canada, you guys are straight up socialist, right? That's your government is socialism, right? It's
We teeter on it. There's more than enough people that are swayed by that. Yeah, I would say so.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Well, and
well,
we're a bit like,
America's not too far behind. We're not
no,
too
I was
far
gonna say,
behind. I mean,
yeah, we're
go
a
ahead.
bit like the US in that sense, right? Like like if you look at LA or California and New York, you'd say, well, the US is socialist too, but the heart of it isn't, right? And it's like Canada's kind of the same way. Like we have more in common with Nebraska here in Alberta, we do, or Texas, than we do with the people in Ontario, or especially the urbanites in Ontario. Like we're more aligned that we just like Vancouver is more aligned with San Francisco than it is with Calgary, and Toronto
Sure.
is more aligned with New York. We think in those same patterns. There's more of a north-south geography and a culture almost, I would say. So, anyways, but your point is, yeah, we are
My
fairly
my my
socialist. We tend to.
well, my point and my question is that so what made the oil and gas industry so prosperous, in my opinion, was that it was a very capitalism market, free market driven industry. It really was. And I understand that, there were some monopolies, Standard Oil and then when the supply chain and you had to basically, strike a deal with the Saudi Arabia and there was all these different geopolitical things that have happened since then. But at the end of the day, in the beginning, it was a free market type of a industry. But what we found out was that we created a society where everything relied on it. So they had to break up these monopolies. And, you got Dow and Conoco and Exxon. I mean, all these other companies came out of it.
Mhm.
Now we're going back to where it's like farming, to where you can't just go plant whatever you want to plant anymore. The government tells you what to plant, and you got to have insurance, and then you got to have the government mandates so many things about farming. That's what I think happened to the oil and gas industry. I think the oil and gas industry got beat up so much that they relied on government mandates and regulations and dollars and approvals for leases and all these different things that they essentially became ag 2.0, that the government tells them where to drill, when to drill, and when you have that, the industry is done. You now control it, and so it's not going to go away. It's just going to be, we're not going to talk about it anymore because we're going to talk about this. And I think that's really what's going on more than anything, because the oil and gas companies, when they first started, you had these old school entrepreneurs. And then they brought in all these educated folk, government relations. And then the oil and gas industry came more about how do we get money from the government? And it didn't come really from the marketplace anymore. It came from the government marketplace. That's what I think has happened more than anything, is that oil and gas has really become more of agriculture than they care to admit, Terry. You're in Canada. You have a
Yeah, I
whole
don't.
different economy system. You're the outside looking in. What, am I crazy or do I got anything here?
Well, I don't see it that way. I don't think I think I see understand your parallels with agriculture. Well, first of all, both of them became a lot more capital intensive. So when I started in the industry, just like I grew up on a little tiny farm, and it was quite small farm. You could operate it with a small tractor and a small cultivator, and now a farm the size that I grew up on doesn't exist anymore. The smallest is a minimum of three
It's
times bigger
that's
than that.
storage now. That's a storage
Yeah,
shed
yeah.
for the farms.
Pit stop. So the scale is just much bigger, and so I couldn't start farming now. You need 3, 4, 5 million dollars to start farming, and oil and gas is the same. I met a guy I remember once at a golf tournament. I don't know, 25 years ago, that started a company with a $25,000 loan from his mom. So he was off and running, and nobody does that anymore. Now I still could go buy mineral rights to a section of land, and if it's in the right place, it'll turn out to be worth a lot of money. So it's not impossible, but it's just a much different game. But as far as the government involvement, I mean, there's a lot of regulatory encroachment for sure. But at the end of the day, the product is, and I don't know how these things work. Like if a farmer goes bankrupt, somebody else will just come in and buy the land at a lower price, and they'll start growing crops again. It's highly unlikely it'll just sit there and not produce something, because the price will float till somebody comes and buys it and can afford to grow something again. And maybe it's more manual or less chemically intensive or something, but whatever. Oil and gas is a little different. It needs a continuous feed of money because of decline rates, right? So every well declines. That's just known. And so, how fast that treadmill is for horizontal wells, it's a little faster. So money has to keep coming in. And at the end of the day, governments, and you see this with Trump particularly, he's acutely aware that the price of oil is critical to the health of an economy. And I think he will do almost literally anything to keep oil prices down, including bombing nuclear facilities in Iran so that Iranian oil can get back on the market, because that will help lower oil prices. So I think that there's nothing that he won't do to prevent low oil prices. He will do whatever it takes to keep them low to the extent he can. The independent side of oil and gas is you still run into that wall of economics where at a certain point they're getting more and more efficient. They'll drill 5-mile lateral wells, but at $50 oil, a barrel oil, they just go, we're not drilling more wells, forget it. So there's a push and pull there. I understand what you're saying about the government pushing on it, but I think there's still a part of the business that's like, unless the government wants to nationalize it all, the money just stops flowing, right? They just like, we will not drill more wells. You can't make us drill wells. The only thing it makes it, to the extent that the market still dictates share price and dividend levels and whatever else. Now that could change too, depending on how the financial world unfolds here. But as it is now, there's kind of a push and pull there. Governments want one thing, and industry says we'll give it to you to a certain point, but below that, we're not going to do it. And it's not like, I guess a factory would be the same thing. If a company shuts down a factory, you need expertise to run that factory, and you can't make somebody work in a factory. You sort of can, but you're not going to get much productivity out of it. That's the Soviet Union tried that. So I think there's more nuances to it than that. And I don't know. That's one thing that's fascinating to me about industry is that, or the energy industry, is that it's a bedrock that cannot go away. That you can change, you can do whatever you want to the automotive industry. In a sense, you can twist them through regulatory hoops and make them do certain things. You can do that with computers, you can do that with AI, but energy is energy, and food is food. At the end of the day, somebody has to grow the food, right? And I don't know that governments can do that as efficiently. I don't think they can. I think the Soviet Union showed that. Governments will never do it as efficiently as individual farmers who want to, for profit or their lifestyle or whatever, want to keep doing that. So, but maybe they could. I don't know. Maybe that'll come.
And I don't mean this to be snarky, or condescending or negative or anything along those lines, but is there really anything the government can do better than the private sector? And I'm being totally serious, because it's government's MO is to create gridlock, is to slow things down, is to keep us from killing each other. Whereas the free market is, hey, I want to kill you faster than you kill me. So I mean, the government's supposed to step in and say, let's not kill each other here, guys.
Yeah, and I think there are relics from the past, which are examples of where governments did do things right, and one from the U.S. and one from Canada. So in the U.S., the government built the interstate system, and it was a hard time, so to speak, for the country. And they said, this will help our country by building this interconnected road network. And it did. It like transformed everything, right? I mean, for better or worse, like a lot of little towns got bypassed and they died. But as far as interstate commerce goes, there's unbelievable difference. Same as Canada, when the government built the railway across the country. It was ostensibly a private company that did it, but they wouldn't have done it without the government making it happen. Then that transformed the country. It opened up the West to settlers. It opened up tourism all along the way. It just absolutely transformed the country. Those were big sort of nation building things that governments can do. And like the push is on in Canada now for nation building projects again, but the regulatory swamp is too big to prevent. You would never build the interstate system again. And we would never build a cross country railway network again. There's too many lawsuits and competing interests and special interests. And it's, some people would want it, some people would not want it. I think it's, look at the fight to build a pipeline across the state lines in the US now. I was just reading about that at lunch. I'm reading about that.
So
Like you can kill a $1 billion project with a simple lawsuit from anybody, right? So, or derail
I'm
it.
gonna jump in here for a second and disagree with you because I used to think the same thing. I remember about 10 years ago, 2016, I was in Boulder Dam, Nevada, right, just south of Las Vegas. It's where Hoover Dam is.
Okay.
And I was in the Boulder Dam Brewery, I think it was, having a sandwich, and I don't know, half a dozen people in there. It's middle of the day. And on the TV, one of the TVs, they just had this like documentary of the Hoover Dam playing 24/7, right? Just kind of, it was sports on the other one, but one of them had their documentary going. And I struck up a conversation in the bar with a guy, and he brought up a fascinating point where he said that we are so polarized as a country, and this was 2016. We're so polarized as a country that we could never build the Hoover Dam again. We would not be able to have the cooperation and the cohesiveness. And I really continue to think about that more and more and more, to the tune to where you just brought up essentially that same thing. We couldn't build an interstate system. And for me, when I look at a government, that's all they're there for. Like, I am so libertarian that after you get done with roads, we got to have a talk, guys. With schools, hold on here. Hang on, hold on. Oh, public libraries, let's slow down here, folks. I'm not saying I'm against it, but let's just hold the phone here.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, that's all old school. I'm good with roads. I get roads.
Yeah.
And so when I
It
take a
is.
look at that, what's happening now, Terry, is we have the internet of the highway system of the internet being built, and the GPS system. So we're having Hoover Dam, and we're having the interstate system built in the sky. We're having it built for AI. So we are doing all this, but we don't even know we're doing it. That's the part that's so crazy, is it such a small group of people that are doing it? And it's like almost to the tune to where it's a dark op or a special group that they're just going to say, all right, here it is, guys, enjoy. And then we're on the backs of our feet once again, reacting and just having to adapt with what they roll out our way. And that is one of the biggest difference of what government was and what it is. COVID really showed that the government has become more of a, we're going to throw something into the marketplace and you all have to adapt. Before then, it was supposed to be where, all right, look at this. We got a lot of people that want to move around. Maybe we should build an internet, an interstate system here, because, you know, people need to get from Minneapolis to Winnipeg. It just needs to happen. It's taken 2 weeks and we lost 4 families by horseback. You know, we got to build some roads here. It's just this. What is it? The old Oregon Trail. Generations died by the time they got to California. Now we can roller skate from Boston down to San Diego on one Route 66. You know what I mean? So I don't know if it's in Boston or not, but
Wherever,
where does Route 66 end on the East Coast? But anyway, go ahead.
And that's an interesting question now too, right? Like about so Elon Musk has his Starlink network built covering the world, which in historical times might have been more of a government function, right? Like this is like critical for humanity. We're going to set this up so that everybody can benefit from it. It's like, is it really good that Elon Musk controls this? Like, and
in North Dakota, they're doing the same thing with a different corporation.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're down in Texas they got Coke, and up here in North Dakota they got Pepsi, and the governments are basically building these private entities. And that actually is, I have a real problem with this because I come from the FCC world. Okay, so I had to do public affairs log recording and because our whole system was built by the taxpayers, we had certain rules and regulations as broadcasters we had to do. Early on, we had to actually go to school for it. We had to get licensed every year. Like we had to actually get licensed because we were using the FCC's equipment essentially, which was the airwaves. It was the people's airwaves. And when I saw the switch happen is with the bankers. So our money essentially, whether you call it too big to fail or the COVID, but since about 2000, there's been, I don't know, 5 big banker bailouts, like huge, like trillions of
2008.
dollars sent to the banks. And then the
Yeah.
banks are supposed to go and give it to this and this and this and get this economy going and this economy. Through all that crap, we built the digital economy. Okay. So when you swipe a credit card, the banks didn't pay for that. The taxpayers paid for that. Why do we have to pay 3% now? Because when I turn on the radio, I don't have to pay. When I turn on the 3 or 4 channels that I get free from my rabbit ears, which I got rid of my TV in 2006. But you see what I'm saying is that there was a time, Terry, when the taxpayers, when they paid for it, it was free.
Yeah.
Now it's the exact opposite. The taxpayers are paying for it, and then someone just gets to keep it. It's theirs. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's weird. It's not even a co-op. Like a co-op, you get. Go ahead. Sorry, I get.
Well, no, we have gone off the rails kind of that way. It's like who allows those people to own and control space, right? Like it's I just find that a little hard to swallow too, that somebody just owns that space now, that they can dictate what happens up there. So it's the tragedy of the commons, right? This is an age-old problem. The commons being like a common area for in the ancient times where animals were grazed, and if one person lets all of their animals out, it'll eat everything, and everybody else will suffer. So nobody can be allowed to fully maximize it. Somebody has to manage it for the good of the village or whatever. There, no matter how free market you are, there's at some things just you have to have a national defense. You have to have certain things that are just like, that's the realm of a government, like you say. So it's probably not good if everybody has.
That's a great point. No, that's a great point. The government needs to realize that if you buy a horse, it actually costs money to take. The money is afterwards. You got to pay for the barn. You got to pay for the feed. You got to pay for someone to take care of it. You got to cobble it. No, what do you do with the horses? You don't cobble their feet. I don't even know what you do with the feet.
Put some shoes on it. Yeah.
Is that what it is? You cobble? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The blacksmithing with the horseshoes and all that different stuff. I worked in a stable for a summer and I loved it. But that's what I'm saying is that there was 3 people working in this stable. And so just because you can afford to buy a horse, now it's like a podcast. Just because you can go afford to spend $50 at Walmart and buy some podcasting equipment, well, the real work comes when you hit record. Afterward, as soon as like writing, anybody can write, but there's actual work involved.
What happens,
So, well, what else is happening, man? Let's wrap her up here. I'm noticing we're on an hour, and we didn't really get to half the stuff I wanted to get to, but
next time
we're okay. It was a good talk today. Expand Energy, 5 mile lateral. I did want to ask you about the walking rigs and the 5 mile lateral, and up in Canada what you have. I know you're in natural gas land, but you are somewhat attuned to some of the different
we got a whack oil too. That's in the oil sands mostly. So I think there's like 3.5 million barrels come out of the oil sands. So it's a lot of oil out of there too.
How is it extracted up there? How's it harvested? 5 mile lateral. To me, the headline is the ecological footprint.
Yes.
It's the environmental innovation is the reason for the White House invitation, is to say, you guys have really become a champion of industry and a champion of the environment. So much so that we can put a well in the White House lawn and you literally can drain the swamp of Washington, D.C. because it's 10 miles by 10 miles. And if that thing can go 5 miles up, 5 miles down, 5 miles right, 5 miles left. We can drain the
Yeah.
whole thing right there on DC. That's the PR stunt, Terry. I
Yeah.
love it. What do you think?
That's incredible. Yeah. Literally drain the swamp of
You
gas.
imagine putting a rig in the White House lawn?
They wouldn't rule anything out these days. And your original point was like whoever did that is as worthy as a White House visit or invitation as a sports team, and I think that's true. That's just something that gets back to what we were talking about earlier. Like people should be grateful for the resources we have and the people that provide it for them. That's I think that's fundamentally one thing that makes me proud to be part of this business and not embarrassed by it. I'm not going to be hang my head because we provide fuel for people. I work for a little natural gas company, and we heat a lot of homes in winter and apartment buildings and hospitals and government buildings, and that's just the way life is these days. You can say, can we wish there was a better fuel? Sure, say whatever you want. You can wish for whatever you want. That's a pretty ancient problem too, right? If wishes were horses, beggars would ride. That's Shakespearean times, I think. You can wish for anything you want, doesn't mean you're going to get it. So but the fact is that's what we require for life today, and people need to publicize that more. So I think that'd be awesome. Maybe not the rig on the lawn, but to bring those people in and
That's
explain.
what I told.
Oh,
That's what I told Joe. I said, "Well, that seems a little ambitious, but hey, if they could get it done, this is the one president that if you're going to do it, you probably could get it done with this
that's right. Just
president because
right now.
well, he would look at it and be like, "Oh, the picture would be great." That's all he would care about. He would just be like, "Oh, the picture would be
Yeah.
fantastic. The visual."
The optics. Yeah. You would go
His
for it.
wife would probably come out for that.
The
Could you
big beautiful
imagine the
rig.
protesters if there was an
Oh,
oil rig on the White House lawn? Oh my
mm.
goodness. We got to
Oh,
get this done. We got to make this
yeah,
happen. This
yeah.
is
It'd be worth it just for the scene.
well,
He's not afraid of pissing on anybody's cornflakes. So yeah, it could be.
no, and really the bigger picture here, though, the Oklahoma Thunder, they won the NBA championship, and there wasn't one NBA team that went and visited Trump. So
Oh,
so all 4 years that Trump was president, they all declined. LeBron said no. Whoever else said no. Oh yeah,
yeah.
I think the Eagles even said no the first time in football. So I'm saying, okay, well, Chesapeake, which is now Expand Energy, they're headquartered in Oklahoma City. They literally power that arena. Let's
Hmm.
let's let's go ahead and send them there. If the Thunder
Hmm.
don't want to pick up that, congratulations. I know
Yeah,
a few rig crew guys that would love to stand and get the Rose
absolutely.
Garden and get that
Yeah,
accolades and this and that. Yeah, that'd be
yeah.
great. Fox News would love it. They'd have a week of content.
Wouldn't they?
Probably pick up a few sponsors too. But well, how can people read your work, Terry? Are you writing these days, or are you taking the summer off?
No, I keep grinding away. I slow down in summer, but yeah, still busy at the BOE report and yeah, my website, Public Energy Number One. I got to get back to that. I just don't have the time for it for both websites and then my day job here too. So yeah, Public Energy or BOE report is where my stuff is.com, and my book is available, like you said, at Barnes and Noble and Amazon. The End of Fossil Fuel Insanity, and it's a confusing title on purpose. So don't be fooled.
Terry Etam, ladies and gentlemen, Canada's greatest export. And we're going to go ahead and hit stop. And thank you very much, my